thanks for joining in to the Speech Goals channel again. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below, and you can also leave some comments or questions that you might have regarding our videos. These videos are intended for parents who are kind of concerned about their toddlers and don't know what to do, have questions. So today we're going to talk about responding to your name. Now this is a very, very tricky thing. For us professionals, you know, responding to your name can indicate a red flag for autism. Not always though. Sometimes you do get kiddos who are a little overstimulated and don't respond super well to things that they hear. We've talked about learning styles in the past, and so if your child tends to be visual and kinesthetic, they tend to move and like to move and play with things that are visually appealing to them, auditory information might be the last thing that they're interested in. And so those kiddos who their auditory preference is last, they tend to not like to respond to their name and sometimes can avoid sounds. Sometimes parents wonder, are they listening? Can they hear me? It takes a couple times to call them. Well, I think it is important today to talk about when to pursue an evaluation or when to look at these things with a closer eye. Responding to your name is kind of a vague question, and I tend to ask parents this: does your child respond to their name? And generally, I would say 95% of the time, parents say yes. And so that's such a vague question that I tend to want to try to fine-tune the question. For example, I will say, are there moments where your child tunes you out? And you're trying to get their attention, and then the answers kind of change. They'll say, yeah, actually when he's watching TV, he doesn't tend to look at me when I'm calling him. Okay, that's okay. That toddlers tend to do that very often. I wouldn't say that that's something to be concerned about. However, how about when your child's playing with their favorite toys? So the time to kind of get concerned about responding to their name is when they're playing with toys visually, staring at them very close to their eyes, turning objects around. It's kind of the kiddos that parents report like to know how things work. So they tend to study objects, they might bring them close to their eyes, might look at things from the side of their eyes. And when they're building and stacking or lining things up, if at that moment you call their name and they're not responding, then that skill really does need to be addressed. That's a skill that babies know how to do. So around 9 to 12 months, kids know what their name is and they respond, even if they're playing with toys that they really like. So if your toddler is not responding, not just in general, not just when they're watching TV, but when they're playing with toys, when they're focused on moving. Sometimes if they're focused on moving and climbing and running and you call for them then, sometimes they don't respond. These are all under the category of responding to their name. What I like to tell parents is if you want to really test, are they really, really good at responding to their name? Put them on the floor or give them their favorite toy and then stand behind them about 3 feet and call their name. As long as your child's looking like more than 3/4 of the time, 75% of the time, I would say no problem really. But if you do have a child that it takes multiple times to call them and there are certain toys or activities where they tend to zone out, then that might warrant a speech evaluation, and sometimes maybe even for a good thing to mention to your pediatrician, just to cover all the grounds. The reason being that we know early intervention works. Speech therapists, early interventionists, we can all work and address these issues and get the kids moving on. So we don't want to have them stuck there, and if you're struggling in knowing how to get your child to respond to their name, great time to get an evaluation, because in speech therapy you can get some ideas of how to get your child to respond to their name. So the question is, how do you get your child to respond to their name if your child is really struggling? So there are some tricks of the trade. I would say there's always these what we call rapid response noises in the child's environment. So maybe your child's not responding really well to their name, but say for example they're a great eater and they love chips. So parents have, these are all the things that I've heard from parents. Oh, a chip bag makes him look like that. As soon as he hears the chip bag rattling, he looks right away. Or, I know he can hear me because when I walk through the door, he can come running from another room. So that's a trigger sound response. If you say the word cookie, he immediately looks at me, but if I call his name, he doesn't. So this is a little trick for you to leave with today. If you are having a hard time getting your child to respond to their name, we want to associate that powerful trigger sound with their name. For example, the parent who told me, I know he can hear me because when I walk through the door, he comes running from the other room. So I say, now from now on, I want you to open the door, call for his name, and when he comes running through the door, you come in when they make like eye contact with you and they come out. So really it's open the door, John, and John comes running out. He starts to associate something kind of positive, a positive sound with his name. Okay, so if your child's really having a hard time responding to their name, it's probably best not to call for them a million times, because the only thing that's happening when you call your child's name, John, 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 and he's not paying attention, is he gets really, really good at not paying attention to his name. So if you're going to call his name, you have to be ready and close to get your child's attention the very first time that you try. Okay, so try not to call your child 5,000 times from across the room to get their attention. Make sure that you tap them, get in their face when you call their name, using those trigger sounds that I talked about, or trigger words. That's all helpful. And yeah, so that's about it for responding to your name, but definitely something to be aware of. And if your child's not doing it very well, it's time for a speech evaluation. You can also mention it to your pediatrician. We're here to help. Speech therapists do this for a living, and I love my job, and I know a lot of people that love theirs, and we'd be happy to help you and your child learn how to do that better. The reason being, again, when your child goes to preschool and the teacher calls his name, if you're having a hard time getting his attention and you're his parent, you can just imagine when there's 15 children in the class and your child's not responding to you, you're the parent, that they're not going to respond to their teacher. So they will miss opportunities for learning if they don't know how to respond to their name. All right, guys, well wishes. Thanks for joining. Please subscribe. We'll be having some of these videos out every week, if not every other week. Toddler Tuesdays. Thanks.